Now, let's take a look at why the emotional brain takes control. Now, first, I want to explain this term, cognitive dissonance, a very common psychological term that refers to the mind being torn between two major decisions. So to keep it simple, I will just refer to being torn between emotions and thinking and reasoning. So feeling and reasoning, pulling in opposite direction. There's a Pali word for this called Vicikicchā. Unfortunately, the term Vicikicchā is translated as skeptical doubt. So it's pulling in opposite direction, causing perplexity, causing indecisiveness, causing stress and distress. Stress is the body changes. Distress is the mind getting disturbed, causing confusion, causing mind in turmoil, and that leads to doubt. So Vicikicchā is not really doubt. It is all these pulling in opposite direction, perplexity, and so on, right? So what you have happening is feeling on one side, right? When you experience something, you have an emotional feeling towards it. But at the same time, you think through it, reasoning on the other side, pulling in the opposite direction. And because of that pulling, you can't decide. But most of the time, the feeling part will win. So there is this tug of war going on, but the feeling part will win. So let me show you what the scientists are saying about this.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, tug!
And when we try to control them, we start a tug of war between our brain's oldest and newest parts. While ancient structures like the amygdala respond to threats by trying to turn our anger or fear on, it's newer structures, such as the prefrontal cortex, the thinking part of our brain, that try to turn them off. It's the tug of war between these two systems that gives rise to our emotions. At New York University, neuroscientist Joseph Ledoux has studied how the amygdala and the cortex shape our emotional responses. You know more about the amygdala than anybody alive, and you still can't control yours.
No.
Why?
Now, there's an interesting thing, again, that has to do with the wiring of the brain. This is, if we could just look at it here. So this is the human brain inside a skull. And the prefrontal cortex is here in the front, right behind your forehead. And that is the newest part of the brain. This is where we make our decisions, this is where we plan for the future and strategize. The lateral prefrontal cortex has no connectivity with the amygdala. The amygdala has superhighways to talk to the cortex, but the prefrontal cortex has only back roads and side streets to get to the amygdala. And therefore it is unable to tell the amygdala, cool it.
But why are there no connections?
We're in the process of evolving as we speak, and those connections have not been put in yet. This thing was built to do fancy things cognitively, not necessarily to control our emotions.
So the scientists were saying that the way the thinking brain has evolved, it is evolved to do fancy things, not to control the emotions. And he mentioned very clearly, the emotional brain in the amygdala, the core of this emotional reaction, has very strong connections to the thinking brain. So when the amygdala is aroused, it sends very strong, powerful signals to the thinking brain, disturbing the thinking brain. All kinds of emotional thoughts will sabotage, will affect the thinking brain. At the same time, the thinking brain does not have strong connections going back to the emotional brain. Therefore, the thinking brain is not able, under normal circumstances, to control the emotions. We need to train our mind to think in such a way that we're able to take control of our emotions. That I will leave it to the next sharing because there won't be enough time to talk about that. So when we talk about cognitive dissonance, what is happening is feelings and reasoning pulling in opposite direction. It leads us to experience cognitive dissonance, Vicikicchā. But because of the emotional brain having strong connections to the thinking brain, sabotaging the thinking brain, we tend to decide according to the emotional feelings. So our decisions is centered around emotionally charged decisions. Now, human beings are very smart. Because we make decisions using our emotions, but we still have the ability to think, we use our thinking to create explanations and clever reasoning excuses to justify why we are reacting in an emotional way. We're very good at that. We're always justifying our emotional reaction. That's why this justification. So therefore, what is happening is we use our emotional brain to make decisions, and we use our thinking brain to defend our emotional decisions. That's what we do. It's called justification.